Rescued is a podcast of conversations with rescuers and those who've been rescued. It's about the lessons we learn about ourselves, the places we go and why, without judgment or shame, to help us have better adventures, manage risk and deal with the unexpected. Heraclitus was a Greek philosopher, born around 500 BC. Now, I'm wondering if he was a bit of a bushwalker and a lover of nature, because he's the one who said, "No man ever steps in the same river twice, for it's not the same river, and he's not the same man." He's also the one credited with saying, "The only constant is change." Nowhere is this more evident than in nature. The turning of the seasons, the changes this brings in life cycles of plants and animals, erosion from weather, climate change, bushfires, my greying hair, you name it. And for those of us who love being out on or off the track, it's something that feels a bit more obvious in recent years. It feels like there's more people, more bushfires, more weather events and landslides that are changing the landscapes we love to spend time in. My guest today has a long history of working and playing in some of the most remote and rugged parts of New South Wales. So, with a few days up his sleeve, a bit of research and the right kind of skills and experience behind him, he set off for another steep and deep trip through Kanangra Boyd National Park, bound for Katoomba. And like Heraclitus foretold, everything changed. Oh, Andy, it is so lovely to have you here on the podcast, and I'm so glad that you came to me with this story that you wanted to tell and wanted to share, and I'm so glad that you are here to tell that story today. Now, your story is quite a recent one. Like, quite often I have people who I'm chatting with who've had experiences from whether it be a year ago or, years, decades ago even. But your story we're going to talk about today happened quite recently. When did this story take place?
It was Wednesday, 28th of February, I was airlifted out.
I want to get to know you a little bit more first, and so we get an understanding of your background, your experience, and why you love wild places. So were you an outdoorsy kid, or did you grow up in an outdoorsy family, or what's that?
My earliest memories, I was thinking about this in the last few days, just me and my mates. You grew up in a place called Barara, which is very bushy and wasn't as built up as it is today, so it was predominantly bush. And we just spend every available time, looking for wombat tunnels or just going bush, like really off the beaten track. Always, sort of getting lost, but, always sort of knowing where we are. I was thinking today even one of my good mates had a fall down a waterfall and was airlifted out. This was probably going back to 1970, 71, so it was a long time ago.
Yeah, right.
But I've always had the bush around me.
So there you are, you're growing up in Barara, loving the bush, hanging out with your mates. Can you talk about how the bush and being out in those spaces of freedom and adventure, how that made you feel?
Oh, yeah. So I guess fearless, wasn't worried about snakes or spiders or anything like that. It was just this, just felt like I was at home.
And so from those childhood adventures and to now, a few decades down the track, did you continue your adventures and experience in wild places and out in nature?
For most of probably teenage years, dropped off a bit, and then I actually worked near the northern beaches, so I surfed more when I was younger. And I was actually working for a record company for quite a lot of years. But I guess as I got a bit older and just got a bit more looking at what I was doing with my life, I sort of was talking with an auntie who's a career guidance counsellor, and she said, "Oh, look, you always love the outdoors. Have you ever thought about doing anything outdoorsy?" So I actually decided to do a Bachelor of Natural Resources at University of New England in Armidale. Yeah, left my career and moved up there and started going to the coast, love surfing. So I'd head down the coast, a lot of weekends, and it was about 2.5 hour drive. And then I one day just went to Wallamombi Falls and made my way down to the river, and I just absolutely fell in love with the outdoors again, and sort of ditched surfing, and then went crazy. Like I just like Oxley Wild Rivers National Park, New England National Park, Werrikimbe.
This is wild country you're talking about.
Yeah. So I actually started working as different roles within the National Parks and Wildlife Service, but particularly for a lot of years I was doing wildlife surveys. So I was sort of looking all around, particularly Oxley Wild Rivers National Park, just looking for signs of spotted tail quail. So I literally, I must have done just hundreds and hundreds of walks down like really hard spurs with big packs of traps on my back, and I just spent weeks out there, just no one else around for weeks. It was just absolutely brilliant. So I did that until about the year 2000. So that was out there on my own, just bush bashing.
For people who may not be familiar with the kind of terrain that you're talking about there, I guess one of the interesting points about these national parks that you're talking about, and some of them are wilderness areas as well, declared wilderness areas, is they're the kind of park that if you look at the topo map, it's these huge swathes of just green and not many tracks through it, and seriously steep ascents and descents. This is taking the Blue Mountains and some of those sort of 1,000-metre Kanangra ascents, but upping them even more than this. So you've come with that kind of experience behind you.
I got out my maps recently and was looking at some of the transects, just shaking my head, just thinking, I can't believe I walked all those. It was fantastic. It was about 7 or 8 years was just fantastic.
And I'm going to ask you again, so when you were out on some of those work expeditions on wildlife surveys, you're camping by some creek somewhere, there's nobody else around, you've got a little campfire going. Where do you go in your head for places like that, and where does the memory sit for you?
Oh, yeah. I remember sometimes I'd just be there and you just sit down and be quiet, and all of a sudden all around you would just come alive. Like it was almost as if everything got used to you, and you just felt like you became part of, just part of the environment. It was just, like I say, I felt more at home there than I've ever felt, in cities or anything like that. Yeah.
Pretty amazing. In terms of the differences between travelling solo and travelling with someone else into, like I said, epically gnarly places like you've described, it's kind of a different mindset when it comes to being, I guess, switched on for all of those risk management type things, hey?
Absolutely. Yeah, it was, to me it was, the wildness and the ruggedness was part and parcel of it. And I know taking other people out there, they weren't really all that used to it, and so I had to be a little bit more sort of mindful of their, where they were stepping and, what they were touching, different trees or whatever that you think, no, don't touch that.
That's a stinging tree.
Yeah. And the other thing too, I guess, I was really good at it. I was really fast, really fit, and so was always a little bit, other people slow me down. Yeah, it's been many decades since I've felt like that, but
So that was back in around the 2000s, you're saying?
Yeah.
And did you stay working within that natural resources, national parks kind of?
Yeah, so I worked for the Armidale district for, I think, about 7 years, and that sort of took me all over the state firefighting. So I'd actually been to Kanangra a few times when around the Cowmung, sort of firefighting there, remote firefighting, and all over the state, up and down the Great Divide. Sometimes all summer bushfire seasons. So that was great for about 7 years. I did that. Yeah.
In terms of the skills that you acquired during those periods of time, in the knowledge of what it takes to visit and live and move through places like this real steep and deep country, what would be some of the sort of skills that you had acquired?
I think the big one is, as you're walking, if it looks like, you come across something that's quite steep or down or up, have a look around. Don't just think that's the only way to go. You've got to take risks there. Quite often, particularly if it's a well-known area, people have walked it before. So, don't just put yourself at risk too much, but have a look around and have that constant assessing where you are rather than just sort of going off blind. I think constantly just checking in with where you are. Yeah, I think that's something that did me really good stead on the last walk. Rather than just continuing going, I just went, I better check.
But also just that having had experience of moving, living and working in these spaces, understanding, your own physical conditions and limits, would you have been very aware of forecasts and temperatures and conditions and that kind of thing?
Quite often I had a radio too, so I could check in with the district office. So most of the time I did I was aware that I had contact if needed, even though PLBs didn't exist back then. It was just people knew where I was. People, I'd check in with people, at the end of the day or whatever. Just always, making sure that people knew where I was, and of course the weather conditions. Yeah, they probably wouldn't let me go out there if it was too wild, because the gorge country can get pretty. The rivers rise a bit like here. The rivers rise very dramatically, so got to be very careful.
Which brings us to the places we're going to talk about today, which is a really special place. It's very special to me, but I know it's special to a lot of people for many reasons, and that's Kanangra. This is steep and deep country. What's the vertical ascents that we're talking in this?
I believe Cloudmaker is about 1,200 metres, and you get down to the Cox's River, which is under 200.
Yeah.
It's a good 1,000-metre drop from Cloudmaker. I think it's about 8K.
So we're talking the Kanangra to Katoomba route, which a lot of people just, we call it the K2K, not to be confused with the Kyanjura to Kosciuszko down south. But this is, the K2K up in the Blue Mountains. So 10 years ago, what did this look like?
Well, I've only ever done the wild dog section, so I haven't actually done south of Cox's River. So I've been into the wild dogs quite a few times, and clear tracks. So up and even before the fires, when I went there, you'd always find up the ridges. You could easily get up the ridges. You could easily get onto you could walk around tracks along, I think it's the side. So you had several options to walk along there. Yeah, never had a problem walking there. It's a very, very clear country.
Single track, well-defined footpad kind of. Yeah.
And well-travelled, a lot of people using them. Well, a good number of people using them, yeah.
Now, stepping across the southern side of the Cox's River we're stepping out of the Blue Mountains National Park and then into Kanangra Boyd National Park and Wilderness. What did you know about the tracks and where did you get that information?
I've done the 6-foot track so many times, and I just thought, it's just a little bit, takes a little bit more effort to get out to Kanangra. So I had a couple of months off this year, just a bit of stress leave. And just before I started, my wife again said to me, "Why don't you go for a walk?" And so I thought, I've done the 6-foot track. I might have a look at K2K. And so, just got on the National Park's website, and they were saying, it is overgrown. It's with the fires and the rain, it's overgrown. But they weren't saying avoid it. They were basically saying just be prepared. And so I did. I had a look around. I just had a look around for trip reports, any that I could find. Just because there's quite often some good information on the web about current conditions. And I think the one that I landed on was probably about 10 months ago. And they said, it was overgrown, but they were making good time, so I thought, okay, they seem to, it is overgrown, but again, nothing that I wouldn't have really worried about, similar to what I've done before. And so I just made the decision. I thought, I'll go and I'll give it a go. It just didn't seem anything like as bad as it was.
And especially given your experience with off-track, thick scrub walking in the past, steep and deep terrain, all of that sounds like a great sort of resume to set yourself up for, in a good way, for something like in Kanangra. So take me to the days leading up to your trip. What kind of preparation did you do?
Well, on the day of the trip, I felt, completely physically prepared to go out there. But I thought, the other thing too, my wife, because I'm nearly 60 now, and my wife, she works at Scenic World, and she just gets a bit worried about me. So she sort of says, "Oh, can you please take a PLB, please, just for my, even not for your sake, for mine, for peace of mind." So I thought, I live at Katoomba, drop my son off at Blackheath to school, and then I thought I'd just drop into the police station at Katoomba on the way home and get a PLB. And when I got there, unfortunately, they don't do them anymore at Katoomba Police Station. They said, "No, sorry, you've got to go to Blackheath National Parks." And so I thought, I've just come from Blackheath. I nearly didn't go. I just thought, do I need one? Anyway, I decided I better have one. So I went back to Blackheath to get one, and similarly, filled in a trip report. Felt, I ticked all the boxes, had everything I needed, and so came back to Katoomba. Then my wife drove me out on the Monday night to Kanangra. I did a couple of hours walking that night just to sort of get go bush, and then Tuesday morning woke up, just sort of made my way around Cloudmaker. It was a bit wet. It was a bit had no issues at all with the track. Dropped down off Cloudmaker to Dex's Creek. Easily made it down there, and I think I went a couple of hours past that. Filled my water bottles up at Dex's Creek and went for another couple of kilometres.
Can I ask you, what was the forecast?
Well, it was interesting. The forecast wasn't rain.
Yeah, right. And temperature-wise?
Pretty mild. So it was sort of like high 20s, mid to high 20s.
Yeah, not hot, not full sun, none of that.
Not by any means, no.
Yeah.
The first 2 days were very sort of overcast. It just seemed to be a decent walk, I thought I was making really good time.
Yeah, and this was past Dex Creek. So on the traditional K2K route, that's traditionally the first night's campsite, isn't it, at Dex's?
Yeah. So I sort of kept going. I thought, this is good, and found a spot a couple of hours later, just before you start sort of dropping down. I can't remember the names of the...
Oh, Marilla Maru.
Yes, I think that sounds like it, yeah. So I got to just before there. And like I say, it just seemed fine. Like there was never any route finding issues. There was not much... there was a lot of tall sort of straight wattle, I think it was, but that was, you could sort of fight your way through it and doing decent time. Never really got off track at that point.
And there was a footpad that you were able to follow to that point, which is interesting because traditionally, the K2K, it used to have the ominous reputation of having the highest amount of PLB activations for any route in the state, in New South Wales. Now, this is going back maybe a decade. It's usually that section between Dex's Creek, getting to that top of Marilla Maru, top of Strongleg, that really messes with people's navigation. So, but you got through that no problem at all.
I did. So I got a topo map, and I just, I think it was All Trails or something. I sort of followed their route down all these ridges, and thought what I'd do is I'd sort of be walking along, and I'd just constantly check my orientation. And sometimes I think you'd be walking along, and there was like an animal track or something that I'd sort of go, oh, hang on, I better, because I could feel I was sort of, instead of being on top of the ridge, I could feel like I was on the side. So I'd sort of just, I've ducked off, so I'd just correct or, turn around. And
so take us to just before Strongleg, and how were you feeling physically at this time?
I actually felt really good. It was like, very, it's a very much an up and down day that, going over Cloudmaker. But I sort of, finished about 6:30, 7 o'clock at night and felt good. Yeah, just sort of felt like very, sat down, set up tent, had, cooked myself something to eat, and felt fine.
Massive thanks for the support from the team at Paddy Palin, who since 1930 have been leaders in travel and outdoor adventure. In fact, did you you know that Paddy himself, a member of the Sydney Bushwalkers Club, was a volunteer in the original search and rescue arm of the Federation of Bushwalking Clubs in New South Wales? Huh, nice one, Paddy. So end of day 2, you're feeling great. You're out here, you know, bit of scrub to push through, but nothing difficult. You're still on the correct route. And what happened as day 3 dawned and started?
Well, initially it seemed okay. Like, again, it was a bit of a bush bash, but you know, at least I was moving through. So it was just around strong leg that it just started to get so thick. Strong leg, last year when the people did it, they talked about a track over the top, and they said someone else had taken the track around the side. So I sort of, as I was going, I tried going over the top, and it was just so overgrown and, like, you know, a lot of trees in there. And so I abandoned that. I thought I'll try and find that other track. And it was just like, that was sort of when it just got so hard. It was such a, like, it took me a long time to get over that little hump. So I sort of, by the time I got to the end, wow, that was hard.
So I'm trying to imagine it and put it into words of the physical strength that it takes to push through. Was it like a wall? Like you said earlier that the vegetation was quite soft, you're able to push through it quite easily.
Yeah.
But from this point at the top of Strongleg, it's sounding like the veg changed a lot, and suddenly it was not just like gentle push through, it was a full body experience.
Very much so, yeah. And particularly there was just nowhere to put your feet. That was the hard part. Like, rather than having sort of you know, a track or whatever, it was just very much you're sort of relying on, you know, stepping over logs, or just, you know, really, really scrub, you know, going through the scrub. It was just it was just, the exertion was, you know, much greater exertion, yeah.
And had you ever come across this type of dense veg in the past?
Yeah, so my son and I, at the end of 2022, the end of the lockdown in 2022, he and I decided to do the engineers track.
Oh, dear. Okay.
In the Gross River. After about 4 days of that, I mean, it was tough going. Gorgeous scenery, but a hard walk. And so anyway, after the 4th day, we were still about 10K from Falconbridge. I sort of showed him, look, if anything happens to me, this is what a PLB is. You know, told him how to set it off and whatever, then put it back in our bag. And then about half an hour later, a chopper went overhead. A chopper came overhead, and apparently the PLB malfunctioned. So we ended up getting choppered out of the Gross Valley. Even
though you hadn't activated it?
That's right. So ended up getting a lift back to Blackheath National Parks. And the guy checked, and it had malfunctioned.
Yeah, okay.
So that was my sort of, I thought, yeah, it is very thick country down there. So I was used to this from Strongleg, that it was particularly similar country.
And do you have a concept, or do you know how fast you were going in terms of speed, like meters per, like hundreds of meters per hour, or?
Yes. So I know that the next day I did, it took me 2 hours to do half a kilometre.
Wow.
Yeah, it was just insane as I got close to the Cox's River. But I would have left probably about 7 o'clock in the morning, and I was going till 8:30 at night, and I probably only did about 5K. So it's probably, you know, half a K an hour, if that.
And it's only when you reflect on, you know, what's normal walking pace for you. So do you know what your average on a, you know, just say a flat single track you'd normally do?
I'd be probably about 10 minutes a K.
Yeah.
So, yeah, about
6 K's an hour.
Yeah.
So this is significantly.
Yeah, very much. And just, you know, the thing too that I remembered after the Gross River is just the cramping. The body, it's so, you know, such a huge exertion, you know, falling over all the time and trying to correct and just trying to get back onto track and everything. I felt, just my whole body cramping. I was, really aware that I had water, but I was, trying to preserve it.
So is this in the gross, or is this back on strong leg?
This is on strong leg. Yeah.
Okay, on the K2K.
Yeah.
So were you physically feeling? This is day 3 now.
Yeah.
So physically, at what point during the day did you start to, in terms of your body health, feel a bit unwell or a bit different?
Oh, look, I think all I was thinking in my head was I could, especially when I saw the river, I think I've just got to get to the river. Like I sort of felt confident I'd make the river. That in my head was like, as long as I can get to the river, I can see it, so I know where to go. But it was just it just was so hard to get from where I was to the river. No track at all by this stage. I just could not find. There was very very little obvious places where I'd say, oh, I'm on the track. It's sort of, there were places where you did, but then it just, before you knew it, you just see going, oh, it's gone again.
You said you picked up water at Dex Creek, which was day 2.
Yeah.
Had you picked up water anywhere else along the way?
No, there was no water sources that day. It was very dry, actually. It did rain that night, so I had little pots that I'd sort of set up and was getting little bits of water from that, but hardly anything really. So I probably got within about, I think I was about 200 metres above the river. And about, like I say, I think it was only about half a K to a K distance, but it was just about 8:30 at night, and I'd sort of, I fell over, I just tripped or whatever, and I just went, oh, that's nice. So I thought, I think I'll just stay here.
Do I have to get up again?
Yeah. So I sort of, it was just not too steep. Just nowhere to put a tent up, but I just wrap myself in a tent or wet weather gear. It started raining, but it was wasn't unpleasant. It was sort of got a bit of sleep that night, but in my head I was just thinking, look, I've just got to get to the river, and so I set out about 6 o'clock the next morning. Yeah.
So before we go to 6 o'clock the next morning, which is the start of day 4, how much water? And the reason I keep asking about the water is because it's sort of going to contribute to how this story progresses. So back at Dex's Creek on day 2, how many litres did you pick up?
I had about 3.5 litres, and then a 5, so about 4 litres.
4 litres, okay. Yeah. And we've talked about the forecast wasn't out of the ordinary.
No.
Now we're on the morning of day 4. You've wrapped yourself in your gear overnight. Not unpleasant, as you say. A few hours sleep. What happens next?
Again, just got to get to the river. So I sort of made my way, and it just, like, initially I thought I was doing decent timing. It seemed like I'd found a bit of a track and was certainly getting down. I could sort of see the Cox's River junction. I thought, oh, that's where I got to go. But then I think it was that rotten, I think it's called water vine. And it's just such a thick, like really thick, it just was everywhere. And then closer and closer to the river, it was just so many logs had fallen over. It was exhausting. Just, fighting through that just took so long. Because
if it's the vine I'm picturing too, I actually call it wall vine because it ends up being like a wall.
Yeah.
And it's so intertwined and creates its own little knots through everything else around it that unless you had a machete, secateurs, you cannot physically push your body through this stuff. It's impenetrable.
You get your head through and then your backpack gets caught in it, and it's just, and then you've got on the ground by then there's a bit of hardenbergia, a bit of the wild, which wasn't too bad, but it was just by that stage, it felt, I think I was really exhausted. Like very soon, realised this is really hard. Like this is, I mean, I'm really struggling. So what I'd actually decided I was going to do then, I thought, because I looked in front of me and I think it was the yellow pup, the walk out, and I thought, oh.
So that's the other side of the river you're looking across at, Yeah.
So what I decided, because I had to actually be out that night because my son Ben was graduating at the police academy in Goulburn, and I was really keen to get there. So what I sort of thought I'd do then, instead of going up I had a look on the map, and the river was quite low, so I was going to make my way up the Coxes to at least get to maybe the suspension bridge or whatever. Yeah, so I decided by then I probably won't continue on the K2K.
Yeah.
Just because I was sort of really keen to get to the graduation. So that was what was going on in my head. I'll just go to the river, have something to drink, and then I'll make my way up the Coxes. Yeah.
Yeah. And were you dry by this stage? Had you run out of water?
I think I just ran out, yeah. So I think I was just expecting there's plenty of water there, so I'll just have a big drink in the river, yeah.
So it's this morning of day 4. You got yourself vertical again. You're still above the river, but you've just got to get down to it, but you've got a new plan, a plan B to move out from here. So what happened between there, making that decision of a different exit plan and getting to the river?
Right. Well, again, I had a look on the map, and it just seemed that to get to the Coxes River Junction was it just looked like bush. I thought, I'm just going to go to the Kanangra Brook. I'm just going to get to the water. So I sort of, was fighting through stuff. I just thought that's going to be my quickest way to water, rather than trying to have to, it just didn't make sense to keep trying to go through the bush.
So what happened when you got to the river?
Okay, so I just got out my my pump, my water pump, and pumped myself a litre of water. Yeah. Chucked in some electrolytes.
Yeah, cool. So one of those, like a Katadyn or something, one of those.
That's exactly what it was, yeah, Katadyn, yeah.
Yeah, water filter, because you wouldn't want to drink the Coxes untreated. It's pretty, it's not great. So you pumped the water?
Pumped a litre of water, put some electrolytes in, had a drink, thought, that's it, I'm fine.
Yeah, great.
Had another litre.
Yeah, happy days.
Yeah, and I thought, I've made it. That's good. And then probably about 10, 15 minutes, by then I was, just covered in dirt and grime and everything, so I thought I'll just have a swim. So I went in the river, yeah.
Oh, and what time was this, by the way?
Probably would have been about 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning.
Got it.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
Beautiful time for a morning bath.
It was fantastic. But then all of a sudden I just started feeling really unwell, and just the water that I drank pretty much just passed it all, and went, gee, that's not good. And then started vomiting, and then so I just went and sat down, and then just my whole body just I thought it was cramping, particularly in my back. My back was just going through these really painful spasms. And I was trying to stretch it out, and it just wouldn't go away. And so I lay down and just pretty much lost all the strength in my body. Just seemed to go, and I'm just sort of lying there going, "What is going on? Like, I don't know what's going on."
And had you ever felt this way before?
No. So this was just like like I say, I thought it was just a cramp, but it was my kidneys that had gone into failure. But I hadn't realised that. I just thought it was just really bad cramps.
Really bad cramps. So we don't know at that stage that it's your kidneys that are playing up. No. And so you're lying there on the side of the Coxes River. You had a swim, but your guts have just let go of all the water you've just drunk and your electrolytes, which seems the logical thing to have done, like in terms of getting that water back on board. What did you do next? What happened? And how much pain can you describe in terms of, say, out of 10, if 10's the worst pain you've ever had? What was this pain level like?
It was probably about 6 or 7, but it was just constant. It just wouldn't, I thought if it's a cramp, I can stretch it out, but it wouldn't go away. And it's sort of, that movement was sort of triggering other cramps, and just sort of, it was just like that. It turns out, I think it's called CK count, which is a creatine count, I think it's supposed to be fairly, under 100. I think it had gone up to 6,000 or something when I got to hospital. So it was an enormous, just my body had just sort of started really rebelling against all the hard work I'd done to it. I just got to the point, like I say, I'd set off the PLB on the Gross River, and I really didn't want to do it again. I just thought, having done it once before, I thought, I can't.
Even though the once before, to be fair, was you didn't set it off; it was malfunction.
I imagine it's the same guys. Anyway, but I just realised I couldn't move, and it was a hard decision. I really didn't want to do it.
Mm.
But I had to. I just realised I couldn't actually get out.
Yeah, because how was you've got the cramps, you lost all energy? Was there other symptoms happening as well? What else was going on in your body?
So actually, my eyes were, the night before it had started, my eyes just really dried up, and they were stinging like mad, and I couldn't really see all that well by then, and sort of tried to wet, and that made it worse. I think all my tear ducts had dried up too, and that was really painful. I pretty much, when I set off the PLB, I just by then it was actually getting quite hot. I think I got up to 42 that day. I tried. There was no shade or anything, so I pretty much just planted myself in the river, waiting for the chopper. Yeah, but I just didn't even try and move by then. I just lost all my strength completely. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you remember what was going through your head at the time? Because you were thinking about your son's graduation that night, but what else was happening for you?
I think because I've never been in that situation before, to be completely helpless. It was just grief was probably what I was going through. It's just like, this is really, this is horrible that I can't keep going. It's actually quite emotional.
I think, and even being able to describe it as grief, because it's almost like the perfect storm of lots of emotions and physical preparation, and your whole life's journey of adventure and your love of these wild places. It's all, and your family. You're thinking of Ben that night.
I think you go to worst case scenario, and I certainly think of other. As I've gotten older, I've had to give up other sports. Like used to play heaps of rugby league, and it was sad to give that up. I used to love jogging. I used to do marathons, and I've had to give that up. And I love that. And I thought, don't tell me I've got to give this. There was just in my head, I'm thinking, now I've got to give this up, and I really love this. And so it's sort of. I think that had a lot to do with it. Just that sense of, I don't want to give this up. I love this. I'd hate to have to give this up always. Yeah.
You'd pushed the button. You'd made that really tough call, and you've explained why that call was so tough for you. What happened next? How long did it take for something to happen?
Well, again, you just don't know what. You press the button, and then it's like, well, what now? And so I just had to wait. Like I literally just lay in the river with my eyes closed. So I couldn't open my eyes. Couldn't really hear anything, and I think it was about 90 minutes before the pole air chopper arrived. Yeah, it seemed to go fairly quick. It wasn't unpleasant, the water was lovely. It was a beautiful area, but it was just again, I thought, well, there's nothing I can do now. Hopefully someone will come. It's a horrible feeling. It's just sort of you go through your head. I wonder if they got the ping. I wonder if anyone's got this. So you're sort of, in a sense, you're just sitting there wondering, I hope someone comes.
Yeah. And it is that thing with PLB devices, and, and there's different types, and there's new technology that's coming now where I remember back to an episode with Linda Berryman from AMSA on the podcast here, where she said that now PLBs, the new ones, actually show a different change of colour in the light. I think it is that when it's actually been received, so you have some sense of knowing, because there is that what if if like your experience at the Gross River, it malfunctioned before. What if this one hasn't worked as well?
I was still feeling very alone by then. There was just no one around. It was just.
And where do you go in your head at times like that?
100%. My faith kicked in. It really did. I just, what's the point of faith if you don't get to use it? And I just saw, well, worst case scenario, I'll be okay. My faith said that, if this is the end, then it's the beginning of something beautiful. So. Yeah, so that gave me a lot of peace, actually, an immense amount of peace. That if this is all going to be over, then that's okay. Yeah, I sort of course, you you think about family and friends and everything, but the bottom line was I thought, oh, well, this is out of my hands.
Do you have a personal story about an incident or time during an outdoor trip when something didn't quite go to plan? Maybe you got lost, injured, let down by some gear, or something else. Look, honestly, it can happen to any of us at any time, regardless of how experienced we are. And it's by sharing these stories that we can all learn and help avoid them in the future. If that's you, I'd love to hear from you. So please drop me an email to rescued@lotsoffreshair.com. That's LOTSA freshair.com. So 90 minutes or so passes. What do you hear or see? Because you said your eyes were not quite working properly. And what happened?
I could see the chopper, but I just couldn't keep my eyes open. So I knew the chopper had come, but I just couldn't. I think I just waved or something, but I couldn't really do much with the chopper. I think by then I was just going, oh, good, there's someone here. I'm in their hands. But I couldn't sort of really communicate all that much with them.
Yeah, I'm in their hands. It's. I love that sense that as soon as you call for help in any situation in the bush, you push a button or you call on a phone or whatever it is, the weight of having a responsibility and decision-making being just on your shoulders is suddenly lifted. There's this whole cloud of experts who come and just lift you up and sustain you through and pass you through this amazing system that we have and we're so lucky to have in Australia. So we're back here on the Cox's River. Polly has landed. Who's there? Do you have memories? How is your memory of this?
One of the Pole Air guys came and I was talking to him and I think I mentioned my son. I needed to get to my son's graduation or something, and he said, oh, the chopper pilot was actually, he'd flown out of Wollongong to go to Goulburn to the graduation, and when he got the ping to come out. So he said, oh, he's actually going to the graduation. I went, oh, far out, that's a small world, isn't it? And then I was talking to the officer. He was a lovely guy. He sort of had a big, it was like a foil reflector or something because he was keeping the sun off me. And I was just talking to him and he said, oh, where's your son getting stationed? And I said, oh, Redfern. And he said, oh, I was at Newtown for many years. And that's when I looked at him and I said, that's where I know you from. So I'd actually gotten to know this policeman when he was working at Newtown and I was at Newtown Mission.
Oh.
So there was, again, just a really lovely connection in the middle of nowhere. With these, one guy was going to my son's graduation. One I already had met before when I was at Newtown. So that was just really encouraging.
And so you're having a bit of a reunion here on the river. So this is Polair and not aeromedical coming to help you. So in terms of first aid or assessments physically for what was happening to you, was there much of that able to take place at that point?
No, they were just keeping me cool. I had tried to drink some water, but I just wasn't able to drink water. And they called toll. They called the paramedic chopper, and that landed just a bit further downstream, and probably about another hour, I think it was, before they were able to walk upstream to me and sort of assess me and then put me in the harness, and then the toll chopper took me to Katoomba. Right.
And what was the paramedic when they arrived? Their assessment of you physically?
So they mentioned that I wasn't able to drink, and so I wasn't able to retain water, so they worried that I was severely dehydrated. They couldn't really do any other assessment. They did say they had a doctor in the chopper, so pretty much get me in the chopper and then the doctor would do an assessment while I was up there. But they pretty much were treating me for severe dehydration.
And what was that treatment? Were they able to get drips in or?
No, so it was just basically just keeping me cool trying to get the sun off me. They couldn't do much but that. Yeah.
Yeah, so pack and send, hey?
Yeah.
You arrive at Katoomba Hospital. What happens there?
Okay, so I mean, first of all, I got to say that it was funny. I got to Scenic World, and my wife and her boss were on the veranda, and they said, "Oh, there's a toll chopper. That usually means it's a hiker." And my wife said, "Oh, Andy's out there. I hope it's not him." And 2 minutes later, I called her, and she said, "It's you, isn't it?" She came over to see me at I think it was the KCC car park where the
oval where quite often the helicopters land.
She goes, "What have you done? What have you done?" And by then they were pretty much just saying dehydration. So when I got into the ambulance, they put I don't know if they put a drip in me or just the cannula. But then I got to hospital, they put the drip in me, and then they did a blood test, and they pretty much came back immediately and said, "You're not going anywhere. You have no kidney function. You've gone into acute renal failure, and we need to get you up into a ward immediately." So I said, "Wow. Does that mean I can't go to the graduation?" And I'd actually by then really gone into shock. Yeah, I was shaking heaps and just quite delirious by then. Yeah, I think it all just hit me when I got to hospital. Yeah.
So acute renal failure. Did they explain what that means in terms of your body?
So basically just dried up. So the kidneys had my right kidney, when they did a CT scan, they noticed that it was just crystallised kidney stones, which I'm getting checked out next month at a urologist to see how they've gone. Hopefully a lot of them have flushed away. So, yeah, pretty much my whole body, or a lot of my body, the levels of whatever it was that should have been high were almost non-existent, and the levels that should have been really low were through the roof. From what I understand, that constant rehydration would somehow kickstart them. And I think the doctor in the toll chopper had said to me, "You may have gone through kidney failure, but they can actually restart it quite easily." Yeah, so he had sort of warned me that was the case. So it actually seemed to be quite the kidneys did seem to restart themselves quite readily. Yeah.
And that goes to the experience you were having with your eyes and the tear ducts. Like you said, everything had just dried up. Yeah. So how long was the period of time, do you think, between when you finished the water that you had on board and you got to the river and were able to take in those?
Apart from, I think I had a liquid, what I call a liquid breakfast or something, that an up and go or something that night, and just the little tiny pots of water that I was able to get off my tent and whatever. Probably half a litre that night before I'd gotten to the river. So
yeah, so that was the night 3.
3, yeah.
Half a litre in night 3, and then you got to the river at 8:30 the next morning.
Yeah, but I remember, it was obvious that I was, I couldn't tell I was sweating because it was quite wet. The foliage was quite wet, but I regularly had to take my shirt off, and I was thinking, gee, I'm like, is that sweat or just water off the trees? But I probably was a lot of it must have been sweat.
And how many days did you spend in hospital?
I was 4 or 5. I was out on the Sunday night. Yeah.
And I'm curious, how long until you were able to pee?
Well, they put a catheter up, and they sort of my bladder was, they blow your bladder up, and so pretty much immediately I was weeing, but it was probably a good 4 days before that catheter came out. So, but that was actually not too bad. I'd had kidney stones 20 years ago, and that was horrible. The first wee, but this one I was going, oh, that wasn't too bad. So it wasn't as bad as I thought it was. Yeah.
What's happened with your body and also with your mind since then? So now, 6 weeks down the track? Yeah. What's the recovery physically and otherwise?
Well, physically, I mean, I just wasn't getting better. I just all my joints in my hands, my knees, my ankles, my bottom of my feet, my hips, my shoulders, all of my joints were just really aching, and I found if I'd been sitting for a while and tried to stand up, I could hardly walk. And I didn't know what was going on. It was just like agony. And I finally, after being sort of told many times to go and see a GP, I finally did. And they basically they said it's a form of gout that because of the sense of just that residual, I think it's uric acid that's sort of collected in all my joints.
Wow.
And so they've got me on a dose of cortisone, and that's worked wonderfully. So about the last week I've been on that, so I'm feeling much more human now, much better now. Yeah.
Yeah. And are there any long-term side effects that you've been told to expect?
Well, I go to the urologist next month just to see if there are any kidney stones were either dissolved or dislodged, or how my kidneys are gone. So hopefully, I'm hoping that all that fluid drain them out. Yeah, I certainly aren't able to walk anything like. I mean, it's only 5 weeks, but I'm not able to do anything like. I wasn't allowed to do anything for the first 2 weeks, and now I'm pretty much just street walking. Just to do short street walks for an hour or so. It's sort of taken to do the Two Bridges walk at Emu Plains, whatever it's called, the River Walk. That's a nice flat walk. So we try and do that as whenever we're down there.
Not even maybe a little bit of the Braeside, a little bit of bushwalk up in Blackheath?
I think you. I was thinking that today, actually. I was thinking I should try that tomorrow. I've got a nice loop down the Braeside and up Pope's Glen. It's just as long
there
as
you go.
that.
Something that I'm very conscious of when it comes to people having had experiences which find their way into the media is that the story that you tell and your story is placed in the hands of other people who then become this secondhand teller of that story. Talk to me about that experience, because I remember seeing it pop up onto Facebook that there was a helicopter rescue from dehydration at the K2K. I think that's the only things that I remember seeing at the time. But it went a bit further than that for you, didn't it?
Well, when I got back, I just thought I'll let people know, because there was no information when I went to do it. And so I thought I'll just give people an update on conditions. And, purely because I thought, I didn't want people to be in the same boat. And so that's all I was really doing. Just, the national parks had said it was a bit overgrown, but just to be prepared. And I sort of said, well, I thought I was, but I ended up, in the condition that I was in. So just to warn people that were considering doing it, that it's, pretty tough. I think there were thousands of people that eventually read it and shared it. So I was glad for that. I'm glad that it sort of I wasn't really that concerned what people thought. I quite often when I'm watching a show like Alone, I don't know if you know the show Alone, but I'll quite often be having a go at them, going, you should have done that, you should have done that. So I can imagine people were like that with me. It's just like it's easy when you're sort of just looking on to sort of have an opinion. But for me, I sort of felt that I'd done all the prep I needed. It was just the one time out of many thousands of walks that I've ever done that it just went wrong. I wasn't that concerned what people thought. I just thought, I can imagine people will have an opinion about it, but this is, for me, this is really important to let people know.
So you put your story out there in your words in Facebook, which was great, and then a couple of media outlets picked that up. How did you feel about the way that your story was interpreted or shared from their point of view?
One of them said that I got lost, and I'm thinking, well, I don't think I never said I was lost. It's sort of people latched onto that. What was he doing out in the bush if he got lost? And so I let it go. I just thought, it's it is what it is. One of them, I was just uncomfortable with their, I sense, I guess, politicization of what it became about government agencies and ineptitude and all that. And I said, look, well, I've still got a lot of friends who work for national parks, and I used to, so I didn't want to go there. I just, I actually said to them, look, I don't feel that's not my agenda is to bash, the national parks workers. So that was a bit uncomfortable too. Yeah.
And also, I guess there's a sense of feeling like your agency is taken away or someone's speaking on your behalf.
Yeah.
Isn't actually how you feel.
That's right. Yeah. But I guess that's what happens though, isn't it? When you enter that media sort of, you're one of many stories, and so it was what it was. They did warn me that, they said, "Oh, are you aware that you may get some negative feedback?" So of course I'm aware. It's anytime I've sort of ever had an opinion about something, someone will have a differing opinion. So it is what it is, yeah.
Because you were the benefit of that review, the 10-month earlier report that someone had put up, and now this is your report of current conditions. When
I got on top of Cloudmaker, there was some very colourful comments that people were just, worst conditions ever,
in the logbook?
So a couple of people had abandoned their walk when I'd got to Cloudmaker. I got, oh, okay, so they didn't make it. So I think by then I was sort of half regretting. I thought, I should have driven to Kanangra, and then I could have gone. But there were just certain points I thought if I'd had the car at Kanangra, it would have been good to have turned around. But anyway, yeah. I was committed to it by then, yeah.
I'm glad you're laughing, Andy.
Yeah, I know, you have to.
So what about, are there things that you've learnt about yourself through this experience?
Yeah. Look, I think I just think it's that sort of sadness as we get older, the things that we just love, the things that are, I don't know, define us, but it just seems that's who I am, that I love that sort of wildness. And I've got some good friends up here that have been similar, a bit older now, but they, some of the walks they've gone on, you just think, that's really, I think it's great in one way. I think I've really lived a good life. I've got some great memories, but there does come a point, I think, when they just become memories, and I'm hoping that's not the case. I'm hoping, because I'd love to be that 80-year-old or that, the septuagenarian who's doing, thousands of kilometres. I'd love to think that that's still possible, but I think if there's an adjustment, I'm not a teenager anymore, and you just have to adjust accordingly. So yeah.
Is there anything in hindsight now? And we were saying, hindsight can be a tough judge sometimes, but this is, and the whole point of this podcast is to be able to reflect on things and think, would I do something different, and to not have any shame attached to any of the experiences, because they can happen to any of us, no matter how experienced we are. Like, you're clearly really experienced in very similar terrain. You weren't going out there without a clue. You had lots of clues. But is there anything you would have done differently now?
Yeah, I'd say I'm ignoring my hiker amnesia. So if you know what I mean, like as time goes on, you think, oh, it wasn't that bad, It's sort of, I'm learning that, yes, it was, like it was really take seriously that it could have ended up much worse.
So in closing, your fabulous wife, who we've chatted a bit about, and Ben too, how do they reflect, and your other members of the family, how do they reflect on your experience, and what was their perspective of it?
I think Melissa, my wife, has been quite defensive of me, because I think she knows she has heard a lot of the negative feedback, and so she's quick to jump to my defence and say, look, this guy knows what he's doing. Back off.
Yeah.
My kids, I think it was hard seeing Dad like that. I think they found it very confronting to see Dad in hospital, having done something he really loves and coming out the other side poorly was the Dad's not Superman, and I think that was hard for them too. Yeah.
So if I was to say to you, hey Andy, I'm thinking of going and doing the K2K next weekend.
Yeah.
What would you say to me?
Don't do it. At the moment, it's just so non-existent. And I think that's so sad. I think these iconic trails that are just so beautiful, like they're really, generations have just got such fond memories of them. And I think it's really sad that they're not currently available to people to walk. Like in a sense, that's that's sad that such beautiful areas are generally closed off now to people, even to people that in a sense would know what they would, felt like they would be able to navigate that. I feel like it's just really sad that these areas are currently sort of not available to use.
What I've always found interesting about the K2K is it has always been a grade 5 plus 5 to 6 on the walking track, Australian walking track grading system. It's never been an official track. It's been more of a route. And you need navigation skills, which you've got. You need to have really good experience and really good fitness, really good preparation to be able to do it. So it's always sort of been that top 5% of people really who it's within their capability, but now it's outside that by the sounds of things. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see what happens in the coming year, I guess, and how the bush continues to have its way.
Particularly with different sort of land practices with the Indigenous people maybe. It might have been much clearer at one point, but with that not happening anymore, I think it's just this is the new sort of reality for a lot of the bush, is that it just gets completely, dense, much denser, and just doesn't burn.
Well, Andy, thank you so much for your generosity of story and your generosity of heart. As I always say, these things can and they do happen to all of us. And, you've given us so many things that we can learn from your experience, not just about this particular route, but in terms of, the preparation, making sure you have everything you need, including the experience, and having some sense of where you go in your mind when your body starts giving up, where we find strength and resilience from, and carrying a PLB, the absolute value of carrying that PLB.
Well, I was actually contacted by a company that makes PLBs in Sydney, and I'm probably their poster boy now. So I've got my own PLB now. So
excellent. You don't have to go and get one.
That's right,
from national parks.
Hopefully, it won't malfunction.
It won't malfunction, and may you never have to push the button, but know it's there if you need to.
And look, I've just got to say, we are so fortunate in this country. The rescue services are astounding human beings, and they love what they're doing. And I think that's what when it happened, I think that they were so in a sense not they were grateful to come out, but that's what their experience had. That's what they love, and they felt I just was very grateful that there's so many people that are so equipped to help people in their need.
So true, and they don't judge either.
No,
so if they don't judge, hey, I don't think we should either.
Yeah.
Thanks again, Andy, and I look forward to bumping into you out there on the tracks as opposed to out there in the wall of scrub and seeing a big smile on your face when you're well into your 80s.
That sounds good. Sounds awesome. Thank you so much for asking me to share too. I really appreciate it.
If you've enjoyed this powerful story or one of the many others from my super generous guests, you can help more people connect and hear these valuable lessons simply by leaving a 5-star review. And why not even click that little bitty share button on your podcast app and help your outdoorsy mates find it too. The Rescued podcast is produced on the unceded lands of the Kanangra people of the Blue Mountains of New South Wales. I pay my respects to the elders past and present and acknowledge their enduring connection to and care for country. Special thanks to our sponsors, Paddy Palin. This has been a Lots of Fresh Air production. Just a little PS here, everyone. I've caught up with Andy and got some updates on how he went with those doctor's appointments. And he's got a couple of small kidney stones that are just giving him a little bit of an ache, but they look like they shouldn't be a problem for him long term, which is great. And even better than that, here's the really good news. He is about to head over to the US with his wife and his 20-year-old, Ben, from the police academy graduation ceremony, and 13-year-old son. And the four of them are going to walk the 270-kilometre Tahoe Rim Trail. All the best, Andy and the family, from me here at the Rescue Podcast and lotsofreshair.com, of course. I hope it's everything you want it to be, with amazing memories that'll live forever.